In Alaska, winter can mean 82 straight days of midnight sun or 65 days swallowed by darkness. Here, the ground isn't just frozen. Permafrost runs nearly half a mile deep, collapsing roads and homes as it thaws. Despite covering more land than Texas, California, and Montana combined, only 1/5 of Alaska is accessible by road. If you thought you knew the extremes of the United States, these 15 insane facts will shatter the map in your head and reveal the staggering forces shaping life at the edge of the possible. But Alaska's scale is just the beginning, because every assumption about geography, survival, and climate is about to be turned upside down. Alaska's boundaries stretch so far, the state covers more ground than Texas, California, and Montana put together. At 663,268 square miles, it is not just the largest state in America, it is bigger than many countries. The width from the Aleutian Islands to the Canadian border spans over 2,400 miles, farther than the drive from Los Angeles to Chicago. But size is only the beginning of Alaska's geographic shock factor. The land rises with a violence that is hard to imagine. 17 of the 20 tallest peaks in the United States punch through the clouds here. Denali, the highest of them all, towers 20,310 feet above sea level and is still climbing. Tectonic forces are pushing it up about 1 millimeter each year. That uplift is not just a statistic. It is the slow motion result of the Pacific Plate colliding with North America, a process powerful enough to create entire mountain ranges and shake cities hundreds of miles away. Water dominates the landscape in every direction. Alaska is home to 3 million lakes, more than the rest of the United States combined. Some are as small as backyard ponds, others sprawl for miles, reflecting nothing but sky and spruce. Rivers braid across the tundra, carving channels that shift with every spring thaw. Along the edges, the coastline twists and turns for over 6,600 miles, longer than all the beaches and bays of the lower 48 states combined. If you count every inlet and island, the total shoreline reaches nearly 34,000 miles, enough to circle the equator and then some. Despite this vastness, the state remains stubbornly out of reach. Only about 1/5 of Alaska is connected by roads. Major highways stop short of entire regions, and there are towns where the only way in or out is by plane, boat, or snowmobile. The Alaska Marine Highway, a ferry system stretching 3,500 miles, serves as a lifeline for dozens of communities cut off from the rest of the continent. For most, bush planes are as common as pickup trucks, and pilots navigate by memory through mountains and fog. The sheer scale and raw topography of Alaska have shaped everything that lives here. Mountains, lakes, and endless forests set the rules for where people settle, how wildlife migrates, and how cultures adapt. Crossing Alaska is not just a challenge, it is an ordeal that tests the limits of engineering, endurance, and imagination. In the Great Land, distance and terrain are not obstacles to be conquered, but forces that demand respect, setting the stage for every wild story yet to come. Temperatures in Alaska do not just dip, they plunge into territory that tests the limits of life itself. In 1971, the mercury at Prospect Creek dropped to a United States record of -80 degrees Fahrenheit. Just 44 years earlier, Fort Yukon saw the thermometer swing the other way, hitting a blistering 100 degrees. That is a 180-degree spread, wider than anywhere else in America. But it is not just about the cold or the heat. In the far north, the sun disappears for weeks at a time. Utqiagvik, perched on the edge of the Arctic Ocean, spends about 65 days each winter in total darkness, then flips to 82 days of unbroken sunlight every summer. The rhythm of life here is dictated by a sky that cannot make up its mind. Beneath the surface, the ground holds another secret. About 80% of Alaska sits on permafrost, soil that has been frozen for thousands of years, in some places more than 2,000 feet deep. For generations, this frozen foundation has been as steady as bedrock, but that is changing, and fast. Climate scientists tracking ground temperatures see a pattern. Alaska is warming 2 to 4 times faster than the global average. The permafrost is starting to thaw, turning what was once solid ground into a slow-motion landslide. The consequences are everywhere. Roads buckle and sink as ice in the soil melts, leaving highways warped and impassable. In some villages, homes tilt at odd angles or split apart as the ground beneath them gives way. Boardwalks and water systems, once anchored in frozen earth, collapse into mud. The cost of repairing or replacing these lifelines is staggering. By 2080, the bill for climate-related infrastructure damage, just from thawing permafrost and related hazards, is expected to reach $5.5 billion. That is not counting the human cost. Villages like Nutak and Shishmaref are already planning or are underway with full-scale relocations, forced to abandon land that is literally dissolving under their feet. A climate scientist studying these changes describes permafrost as a carbon time bomb. As it thaws, ancient plant matter locked in the ice begins to rot, releasing methane and carbon dioxide into the air. This not only speeds up warming, it also threatens to make the problem irreversible. Alaska's hidden instability is not just a local crisis, it is a global warning sign. Underneath the snow and spruce, the ground is moving, and nothing built on it is safe for long. For wildlife and people alike, survival in Alaska means adapting to a world where the very earth cannot be trusted. In Alaska, survival isn't just about braving the cold, it's about sharing the land with some of the wildest, most outsized creatures on the continent. The land's first heroes weren't people, they were dogs. In January 1925, Nome faced a diphtheria outbreak with no medicine in sight. Planes couldn't fly through the blizzards, so 20 mushers and their sled dog team set out across 674 miles of frozen wilderness, racing the clock in what became known as the Great Race of Mercy. They battled hurricane-force winds and whiteout conditions, relaying a life-saving serum in just 5.5 days. Balto, the lead dog on the final stretch, became a legend, but every team along the route was pushed to the edge of exhaustion. In a place where roads end and weather rules, sled dogs were the original emergency responders, living proof that adaptation is about grit as much as fur and muscle. Out on Kodiak Island, the world's largest brown bears roam the spruce forests. These Kodiak giants can weigh up to 1,500 pounds and stand over 10 feet tall on their hind legs. Isolated from mainland grizzlies for 12,000 years, Kodiak bears have grown massive, feasting on endless salmon runs and berries. It's not just size that sets them apart, it's attitude. Bears here break into cabins, patrol fishing streams, and sometimes wander right through town. Biologists track them with radio collars, and there is a saying, in Alaska, you're never really alone in the woods. Above it all, bald eagles rule the skies in numbers that defy belief. While the lower 48 states boast about 40,000 nesting pairs, Alaska alone is home to more than 30,000. In places like the Chilkat River, hundreds gather in a single tree line, their white heads flashing against the gray sky. Eagles swoop down to snatch salmon from icy water, sometimes fighting over scraps in midair. For many Alaskans, spotting an eagle is as common as seeing a crow in the city. On the ground, moose outnumber people in wide swaths of the interior. With a population between 175,000 and 200,000, these towering herbivores wander through neighborhoods, block highways, and munch on backyard gardens. In winter, they use plowed roads as easy paths, sometimes sparking standoffs with drivers and even the occasional moose on dog showdown. Bull moose can weigh up to 1,600 pounds and clear 6-foot fences with a single leap. For rural residents, learning to coexist means checking for antlers before stepping outside. Not every giant is a comeback story. Wood bison, North America's largest native land mammal, vanished from Alaska for nearly 5 centuries. In 2015, wildlife managers reintroduced a herd to the Innoko River region. The sight of these prehistoric beasts, some weighing over 2,000 pounds, roaming the muskeg is a living experiment in restoration. Biologists now monitor their slow spread, hopeful that the bison's return will restore lost balance to the landscape. These wild giants aren't just Alaska's backdrop, they are its main characters. Each one tells a story of adaptation, survival, and the constant tension between wilderness and the people who call it home. Where the land is untamed, the animals that thrive here are reminders of just how much life can bend, grow, and fight back against the odds. Long before gold prospectors and pipeline engineers arrived, Alaska's indigenous peoples built lives around the land's wild rules. For over 15,000 years, they adapted to shifting rivers, moving ice, and the relentless challenge of distance. As one Inupiat elder put it, "We do not conquer this place, we learn to live with it." That lesson has shaped every community here, from the biggest city to the tiniest village, forcing invention in the face of impossible odds. Juneau, the state capital, sits hemmed in by mountains and water. There is no road connecting it to the rest of Alaska or the North American highway system. Every person, every crate of groceries, every car must arrive by boat or by plane. It is a city that runs on ferries and float planes where a snowstorm can delay the entire government. The Alaska Marine Highway, a 3,500-mile ferry network, ties Juneau to other coastal towns, carrying everything from mail to moose antlers. The ferries are more than transportation. They are lifelines, threading through fjords and past glaciers, keeping communities alive in a landscape that does not care about convenience. Then there is Whittier, a town that rewrites the rules of what a community can be. Tucked at the end of a tunnel through a mountain, Whittier's 272 residents live, shop, and go to school inside a single 14-story building called Baggage Towers. The post office, the police station, the grocery, and even the church all fit under one roof. In winter, when storms roar in off Prince William Sound, families can go days without stepping outside. It is part fortress, part apartment block, and all adaptation, a response to fierce weather and the need to conserve heat, supplies, and connection. Alaska's map is more patchwork than grid. Only about 20% of the state's land is accessible by road. Some villages are reachable only by bush plane or snowmobile, others just by boat when the rivers are not frozen. The rest is a maze of federal lands, national parks, wildlife refuges, and military zones, covering more than 60% of the state. Navigating this patchwork means negotiating with agencies in Washington for everything from hunting rights to road repairs. For many, it is a daily reminder that the land belongs to everyone and no one at once. The cost of living in these remote settlements is staggering. Building a mile of road or stringing a power line can cost 3 to 5 times more than it would in the lower 48. Groceries, fuel, and medicine all arrive by barge or plane, making a gallon of milk or a loaf of bread a luxury in some villages. Yet people stay, drawn by family, tradition, or the promise of freedom at the edge of the map. Alaska's history is written in waves of outsiders. The gold rush that brought 100,000 prospectors in the late 1800s, the military buildup during World War II when Japanese troops occupied the Aleutian Islands, and the engineers who carved out airstrips and radar stations on permafrost. Each wave left its mark, but none erased the need for invention. Today, communities blend old wisdom with new technology. Some villages rely on satellite internet for school and telemedicine, while others still hunt and fish as their ancestors did, using snowmobiles instead of dog sleds. In a place where the only constant is change, survival depends on flexibility. Whether it is living in a single building to weather the storm, running a ferry network as a floating highway, or fighting for the right to harvest wild salmon, Alaskans have made constraint a source of creativity. The land tests everyone, but it also rewards those who can adapt, connect, and persist. As the world grows smaller and more connected, Alaska's communities remain reminders that ingenuity is not just about gadgets or grit. It is about finding ways to belong in a place that refuses to be tamed. Oil transformed Alaska overnight. When the Trans-Alaska Pipeline began operating in 1977, it carried a river of crude 800 miles from Prudhoe Bay to Valdez, unlocking a new era of wealth. The project cost $8 billion, one of the most expensive engineering feats on American soil. For years, the state budget was flush, feeding on royalties as production soared past 2 million barrels a day. But prosperity came with a price. In 1989, the Exxon Valdez ran aground, spilling 11 million gallons of oil and scarring more than 1,000 miles of pristine coastline. The trauma still echoes in fishing towns and native villages decades later. To shield the future from boom and bust cycles, Alaska created the Permanent Fund in 1976. Oil money poured into an investment account now worth over $80 billion. Each year, every resident receives a dividend, $1,702 in 2024. No state income tax, no sales tax, just a check for sharing the bounty. But the pipeline's flow is shrinking. Daily output has dropped to about 420,000 barrels a day, less than a quarter of its peak. The cost of living keeps climbing. Milk can top $12 a gallon in remote villages. One state economist warns, our cushion is deep, but it's not bottomless. Alaska's wealth looks limitless, but beneath the surface, the ground is shifting. On March 27, 1964, Alaska shook with a force that rewrote the map. At 5:36 p.m., a 9.2 magnitude earthquake, the most powerful ever recorded in North America, ripped open the ground for nearly 5 minutes. Anchorage buckled, roads split apart, and entire neighborhoods slid toward the sea. Tsunamis crashed into coastal towns, and the land itself rose or sank by as much as 38 feet in places. The scars are still visible, and so is the risk. Alaska sits atop the Pacific Ring of Fire, where tectonic plates collide and grind, building tension that never truly disappears. That tension breaks loose every day. Alaska endures more than 40,000 earthquakes a year, more than the rest of the United States combined. Most go unnoticed, but a few are strong enough to rattle nerves and foundations. The same forces that shake the ground also fuel more than 130 volcanoes, some still active, sending ash clouds high above the tundra. Scientists monitor these hazards with a web of seismometers and satellite feeds, but prediction remains an imperfect science. As one seismologist puts it, Alaska is a living laboratory for geologic chaos. We don't control it. We just try to survive it. Alaska stands as a living test of how much extremes a society and an ecosystem can endure. As its permafrost thaws and oil revenues decline, the choices made here foreshadow challenges the world will soon face. In this vast, wild laboratory, resilience and risk collide every day. What happens next in Alaska won't stay isolated. It could shape the future for all of us. Share your thoughts below.